Claudia Sidonia Alexander Whitworth, a pioneer and publisher who overcame great odds, changed a city, and never missed a single edition. Claudia Alexander was born in 1927 in Fayetteville, West Virginia, to parents the Reverend F.E. Alexander and his wife Sidonia. Her father worked hard to make ends meet, preaching at the Rustburg Baptist Church on Sundays, running a printing business, and teaching printing at the Virginia Theological Institute, all at the same time. In 1935, Claudia and her siblings, Frida and F.E. Jr., moved to Christiansburg, where her father took over at First Memorial Baptist Church. After second grade, she attended Quaker schools, graduating from Christiansburg Institute at age 16 because there were only 11 grades, 7 elementary and 4 high school. Her mother and 3 of her aunts had graduated from college, her mother from Ohio State. Yet after a brief stint at Bluefield State, Claudia rebelled and said she wanted to find her own way. In her words, quote, "All the educated ones couldn't relate well with people or even each other. If that was education, I didn't want it." So she did the next best thing, picked out a medium-sized dot on the map and moved there, Dayton, Ohio. She had sold newspapers door to door to raise the money for the train ticket to Dayton. She tried to find a job in the printing business there, but without much success in the mostly union shops. She waitressed some, telling her employer she was 21, though she was still a teenager, but eventually she moved to New York. In the Big Apple, she found a newspaper job as a linotype operator at the New York Age, an African-American paper co-founded by Timothy Thomas Fortune, a former slave. The work was hard, changing the heavy typefaces, and Claudia was one of very few women to work in the composition rooms in that era. Claudia skipped around a bit during that part of her life, working for papers in Cleveland and at Ohio State. She eventually returned to Roanoke occasionally to help her father, who had founded the Tribune. She joined her father as a full-time worker in the summer of 1945. But in the early 50s, she and then-husband Robert Hale moved to Los Angeles for a short stint, returning to Roanoke after the birth of her son, Robin. 14 months later, Claudia faced heartbreak as one of her twins died during childbirth. Hospitals were not integrated, and doctors refused to deliver babies after 10 p.m. She went into labor at midnight. A doctor had told her earlier that they were all likely to die. Her son Stanley is the surviving twin. Daughter Eva joined the family 10 years later. And in 1971, her father was severely injured in a car accident. She took over the paper thinking that she would run it until his return, but he never did. Thus began her long tenure as owner and publisher, and her emergence as a unifying force as Roanoke grappled with the notion of desegregation. One night she had an epiphany. The Reverend Ralph Abernathy spoke in Roanoke, supporting poor blacks, but boasting of his own affluence. It angered the young journalist, who editorialized her condemnation of the speech. She expected backlash, but instead won support. It was then she realized the power and responsibility she and her paper had in the African American community. The newly energized publisher would face serious hurdles as she endeavored to get the weekly paper to its readers. In 1976, her building on Henry Street was firebombed. The building was destroyed, but the presses survived, and the paper went out on time. In August of 1983, she arrived one morning to find city bulldozers had leveled her business. By a stroke of luck, a new printing press was not in the building, but in her ailing father's bedroom. She had placed it there so she could care for him and run the paper. That issue also was published on time. That was the same year her husband, Clifton Whitworth, lost a 12-year battle with cancer. The paper then moved to Melrose Avenue, and a few years later Claudia purchased the building next door, turning it into a community center. Her goal, to provide a sense of worth, responsibility, and mutual respect among neighborhood youth. The kids also helped with mailing and distribution of the Roanoke Tribune. Claudia's many years with the Roanoke Tribune placed her in the midst of national political figures, including Henry Kissinger, Nelson Rockefeller, Ambassador Andrew Young, and entertainers Isaac Hayes and Nancy Wilson. A member of the Baha'i faith, Whitworth exemplifies its main pillars: justice, love, and unity. She's dedicated her life to being, quote, an instrument of God in serving others. And her service and influence extend well beyond Roanoke. She has served on Norfolk State University's President's Roundtable and the Board of Visitors. She chaired the Employee Relations Committee of the Welfare Reform Commission during the Wilder administration, and she served on the boards of the Bradley Free Clinic, the Salvation Army, and its Battered Women's Shelter. She chaired the Roanoke Neighborhood Development Corporation and the Conflict Resolution Center, while serving the American Red Cross, Habitat for Humanity, and many others. Claudia is proud to serve on the Roanoke City Baha'i Local Spiritual Assembly. She served as president for 20 years of the Community Housing Corporation, a 24-unit apartment complex for the handicapped and elderly built by her and her late husband. Her many honors include induction into the Virginia Women's Hall of Fame in 1992 and being one of 3 NCCJ Brotherhood Sisterhood Award recipients in 1993. She was honored as Citizen of the Year in 2004 by the City of Roanoke, and this past April, Whitworth received the 2009 African American Trailblazer in Virginia History from the Library of Virginia System. Claudia, along with 2 granddaughters, is a part of the Harrison Museum of African American Culture's newest photo exhibit entitled Women of the New Tribe. But Whitworth considers the very first recognition the most amazing. In 1976, she was listed in a publication in Washington, D.C. of selected leaders, among such greats as Harriet Tubman, Sojourner Truth, Mary McLeod Bethune, and others. Quote, at a time when I had done absolutely nothing that anyone could have ever heard of. She claims this miracle to be the propelling motivation behind the rest of her life of service. Uncomfortable with the honors, however, she says, quote, nothing I've ever done has been a plan of mine. I'm just an instrument, and you don't honor instruments. Be that as it may, the newspaper run by that so-called instrument, which just celebrated its 70th year, has never missed a week's publication. Her Turtle Tracks column has provoked thought among readers for years, and it's worth noting the purity of her cause. She never drew a salary from the paper. Among her latest efforts is involvement with LAM, the local association for the advancement of mankind. Housed in a community center that she bought and renovated on Melrose Avenue, LAM is dedicated to reaching across racial and religious divides. Quote, a vehicle, she says, that unites diverse peoples and promotes respect and differences in others. Today, the Roanoke Tribune is a family affair, with the 4th generation taking part. It is run by Claudia, her son Stan, his daughter Lauren Hale, and grandchildren triplets Kenneth, Caitlin, and Claudia Shaw. She says, all I ever think about is surviving each hurdle as it comes along. It gives you an attitude of gratitude. Roanoke owes Claudia Whitworth a debt of gratitude for her years of service as she becomes the latest laureate in the Junior Achievement Business Hall of Fame.